Ever wonder how to capture the essence of time in your street photography? And want to make your photos a bit more dynamic? Well, stick around. I'm going to show you the how and the why of slow shutter street photography. Today we're going to dive into the world of slow shutter street photography. It's a great way, a great technique to imply the passage of time in your photographs, and just another way to make them a bit more dynamic. With a little bit of practice, anybody can do this. And I guarantee you, it will add a whole nother level of interest to your street photography. I'm Keith Pitts. I've been a professional photographer for about 30 years and shooting the streets for about half of that. I'd like to share my experiences with you. Let's start with the basics. First, what is slow shutter street photography? It's a technique that will imply motion. We're using a slow shutter speed to blur moving subjects and leave your background sharp. This will give you a unique sense of motion that still images usually can't. Why would you want to blur movement when you can easily freeze it? Well, it just gives you another tool to show motion in your work. It's kind of like knowing other ways to say the same thing. It prevents you from sounding boring. Secondly, use slow shutter speed street photography to infer the passage of time. It's pretty simple. By using the slow shutter speed, you're allowing things in motion to blur, such as time, and the things that are rigid, they just stay there. So they'll stay sharp, and this contrast give you a sense of time passing you couldn't on a still image. The longer the shutter speed, the more the blur. Be careful to ensure that you're stable. Otherwise, you'll end up blurring everything, and it pretty much makes the whole point of this move. Now let's talk about the how. First, you're going to need to set a slow shutter speed. So again, rule of thumb, I'll start at the 30th of a second. Why? Just because I like it. Then I suggest you experiment and see what you can handhold and how much blur it gives you. Second, make sure you adjust your aperture accordingly. Again, if you have shutter priority on your camera, which most cameras do these days, and they have for a long time, not so much on Leicas, set it and then forget it. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to make sure that your exposure is right and that your shutter speed is long enough to give you the blur. With a low ISO and a small aperture, you still can't get what's called a slow enough shutter speed in order to have your exposure correct. Then you're probably going to have to use neutral density filters. There's a good chance that your camera, if it's new, has image stabilization. That is a great benefit for this technique, but it's not necessary. Stabilization is key. There's better and worse ways to hold your camera, but I'm just going to show you the best. First, feet should be about shoulder width apart. Next, take a little step back, lean your weight onto your back foot. Next, bring your camera up to your eye, bring your elbows in, tucked against your body ideally. Then make sure your camera is gently resting against your eyebrow or your face, however, so it's there and not moving. So you want to exhale slowly while pushing the shutter down gently, all in one move. Now, this seems like an awful lot to remember, but with practice, trust me, it'll become second nature, and you'll be doing this all the time. I won't get into tripod use, because it's the same thing. The difference is you can use as long a shutter speed as you like. So if you don't have a tripod and your shutter speed's too slow to handhold, there's usually some environmental options, such as handrails, the floor. Like you can use a trash can. Once, a long time ago, I used the top of my friend's head. Just did it once, don't recommend it, but it was an option. I think a shoulder is probably better. That's all I've got today for slow shutter street photography. For another slow shutter technique, watch the video below. I hope this is helpful. Remember to like and subscribe for more street photography content. Thanks, and remember, don't forget your camera.